All right, back with another tier list. Back with another, player playoff game tier list. These are, very fun to do, I think. So yeah, I think you can figure out how this works. I should just give a quick plug at the beginning of this video. I have a movie channel as well where I do some tier lists on there, along with like movie reviews, stuff like that. If that seems like it's something you're interested in, the link is in the description below. But without further ado, let's get into the tier list of Joe Burrow's playoff games. So we're doing every Joe Burrow playoff game, which is interesting because he's actually only made the playoffs twice in his career. So only 2 runs, but he still has 7 games. So I figured, you know what? There's enough here. We can make it happen. Why not? It could be just a fun, quicker tier list video. So yeah, without further ado, the first game he played was against the Raiders, and he actually played pretty well in this game. This was one where typically you expect a player playing in their first playoff game to have kind of a bit of a dip. He didn't really have that. Is this one of his best? That's a little bit tough to say. I kind of think it was. I thought he played pretty well against the Raiders, even though 26 points might not seem super impressive. I thought he had a really good game in this one. So, yeah, that's where I'm going to go with that. Starting off with a bang with one of his best. And then we go over to the Titans game. This was a big upset. If you remember, the Bengals were favored to beat the Raiders. They kind of met expectations of, what we thought they'd be once they entered the playoffs. But then they were playing the Titans, who were the 1 seed that year, and many thought was a bit of a fraudulent 1 seed. In fact, I believe Vegas only had the Titans as 1-point favorites over the Bengals. But still, this was a game where Bengals were going to have to really, show who they could be in this one. And really, their defense played great. They got 3 interceptions from Tannehill. That was kind of the main driving force. But, you look at Burrow's stats, they aren't overly impressive. In fact, 0 touchdowns to 1 interception isn't great, although he also nearly had 10 yards per attempt. So it was an interesting stat line, I suppose. It's another one where I thought he played pretty well in it. I don't think it was quite as good as the Raiders one, so I'm not going to put it in one of his best. But he did have he made a really good throw to Jamar Chase towards the end to get them in field goal range to win that game. I thought it was a really, really good performance. We didn't have what still to this day is his most memorable game. It's his best in terms of his legacy game against the Chiefs, because they took down the juggernaut, the Chiefs. Still at this point, only 2 people have beaten Mahomes in the playoffs. It's Tom Brady, who's no longer playing, and Joe Burrow. Although, again, it's a team sport, right? And if you go back and watch that game, I don't know if it's fully fair to say that this was his best game. It wasn't. I mean, he did some nice things for sure in this one, but really, I think, when I did my Mahomes tier list of this was in his bottom tier because it was one of his worst games, which you got to give credit to the Bengals defense, and you still have to give credit to Burrow, who did do some nice things in this one. He was not perfect though, so I think still really good feels fair in terms of his performance. But again, in terms of his legacy, this is the one that's when you'll talk about if you're a Burrow fan and trying to defend he's great because he beat Mahomes. That's the first point you bring up because of this game, even if it was again how all games go, a team effort. Then you have the Super Bowl, which I thought he played really well in this game. I mean, he was making some of these, that downfield throw to Jamar Chase to kind of get them back in it was great. And even that throw to T. Higgins to get that big touchdown later on. While, yes, it should have been a penalty for T. Higgins, it was still a great penalty on T. Higgins. It was still a great throw by Burrow. So, one of his best. I don't know if I can quite go there, but he was still really good. So, again, that first playoff run, the numbers weren't always otherworldly, although they tended to be pretty good. I thought that he was playing particularly well in this stretch. So then he had another playoff run where things still went pretty well. Again, did not get the 1 seed, so they had to go to the wild card round, playing the Baltimore Ravens, who did not have Lamar Jackson. It's the Tyler Huntley-led Ravens. And if you remember in this game, Huntley did his best. There was that 100-yard touchdown that kind of sunk the Ravens. The Ravens were in this game throughout. I didn't think Burrow was at his peak in this one, but was still playing against a good defense and still was able to survive. He didn't have any interceptions. again, I'm surprised I'm doing this, but I think I'm going to also put it in still really good. Like, you went up against a good defense, you didn't make any mistakes, and you did enough to get the victory, and made enough plays. Like, to me, that's where I view it. We then have the Buffalo Bills game, this was the game that, they were going to the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills were favored in this game, and there was kind of a debate as to, I think most people had given Mahomes, he's the best quarterback in football type discussion. There were people, trying to figure out who's the contender, who's the number one contender to Mahomes, and Josh Allen kind of got put in that, and then kind of immediately Joe Burrow took that away from him. This was the game where people said no. Joe Burrow was the second best quarterback in football. I think because Burrow got hurt last year, he's kind of been taken out of that a little bit to where now he's in the discussion for the number one contender again, as opposed to just the clear-cut number one contender. He was great in this game. It was in the snow, and he was still throwing dimes, making a lot of great throws. This wasn't one of his best. This was his best, so I'll put him even in the front. These aren't really in any order, but I'll make these two in order because I thought he was fantastic in this game. So, yeah, that was one of his best. And then finally, so we're, now at his 7th game. So far, he's yet to even just meet expectations. He's been above expectations throughout, which is not how I thought this list was going to go, but it's how it's gone so far. Then we get to the conference championship game against the Chiefs. And again, you're judged by your wins or your losses. And this was a close game. It was. I mean, it was a tied game. The Chiefs kicked the last-second field goal to win by 3 points. So this was not a disaster. I didn't think Burrow played his best game. He had two turnovers in this game, the only game where he's thrown multiple interceptions in his playoff career. He did still have some nice plays in this one. I don't think I can fully put it in one to forget, but this was his one negative game. This was underwhelming for me. They came very close to pulling it off, but weren't quite able to do so. So, I do think there was some, again, it felt like they were going to win when they converted on 3rd and 17 or whatever it was, but they just, couldn't get guys open consistently. Again, part of it was it's a team sport. Chiefs defense played really well in that game. This was the pretty similar Chiefs defense to what we saw this past year, right? It was really good defense that smothered a lot of, players, but still, I think that Burrow made some mistakes that you don't typically see him making. So this was an underwhelming performance by Joe Burrow. So yeah. Again, only 7 games to talk about, so there's only so much we have to discuss, but I do think it's interesting how many of these games are in the positive column. Not even, again, to me, met expectations just means you go in and play like a typical Joe Burrow game. And so the fact that in 6 out of these 7 games, he's done better than that is, to me, really impressive, and it kind of goes to show why he's, one of the reasons why I still think that he is the second best quarterback in football, even though I was assuming this was going to be a bit all over the place. I was expecting a lot more met expectations. I didn't expect to be so positive, but I think it's fair. Let me know in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.